let's come back to our examples and talk about quartiles. Now, quartiles end up being really important when we really talk about analyzing data. The quartiles end up being really important. We're going to really look at data and analyze a little bit more, but for right now, again, we're just sort of focused on the calculations. So the first quartile, basically the quartiles, so the median splits the data in half, and the quartiles split it even further into quarters. So the first quartile is the median of the lower half of the data. So for here, and I'm just still working with this data right here, so the lower half of the data is 3, 4, 4. Now, how would I know that's the lower half? Well, because the median splits it in half. So the median is here. I'm just taking the lower half here. So then the median is, the first quartile is the median of this data, which is the middle number, which is this. So the first quartile here would be 4. Okay, this is also called, it can be called the first quartile, it can be called the lower quartile, or Q1. It's also the 25th percentile. So in a large set of data, we talk about 25% of the values being below this number. Okay, so this is 4. Now the third quartile is basically the same idea, but for the upper half of the data. So in this case, the upper half of the data is 7, 8, 9, and that middle number is 8. And then the interquartile range is the middle half of the data. It's the data that lies between the upper and lower quartiles. And so in this case, it's just the third quartile minus the first quartile, and so in this case, it's 4. Okay, now where this ends up being important is in this case, look, the range is 6, and the interquartile range is 4. That means that there's not, if interquartile range is let's say it's this big, and the range is only a little bit bigger. So that means that the data is it's a little bit spread out through the middle and through the whole set of data. Whereas, let's say I had an interquartile range that was 4, and the range was 100. Well, that would mean that most of the data is kind of in the middle, all in one place, but then there's these extreme values on either end. So these numbers give us good information once we start really analyzing data and looking at it, which we'll do more. Okay, let's take a look at this example. And here we have more numbers. And notice something really important here. We have a median. So here my median was halfway between 4 and 7. So it was just really easy. This was the lower half of the data. This was the upper half of the data. Okay, now here it's a little bit trickier because the median is actually a number. So the question is, do we include it? Or do we not include it? And here's the thing, different people do it differently, and so we just need to choose whether we include it or don't include it. And so I'm gonna choose that we don't include it. So we don't include the median, okay? Don't include the median, right? And different people do it differently, so we're just choosing, okay? So I'm going to take this lower half of the data, so it's 60, 61, 63, 64. So that's my lower half. Notice I didn't take the median. I'm not including the median in either one. Here's the upper half, 72, 75, 78, 79. Okay, and we're going to be consistent. We're not going to include the median. Okay. So if I want the median of these numbers, I notice the bottom, top, next. The median's the middle of these two numbers. I'm going to take the average of those two numbers, the mean, 61 plus 63 divided by 2. You might be able to figure out what the average of 61 and 63 is. What's the number right in between? It's 62. Okay, same deal here. I'm going to take these two middle numbers. So it's going to be, in my calculator, it would be 75 plus 78 over 2. You can do it like that in your calculator. Or you can just figure out, okay, well, this is, if I go 1 up and then 1 down, this is going to be, what's in the middle is this, right? This is 1.5 up from 75 and 1.5 down from 78. And then here, the interquartile range, again, is just that distance between the third quartile and the first quartile. So I'm going to subtract. I'm going to just use my calculator here just to be super careful, even though I think this is probably math you could do in your head, but look, 76.5 minus 62, and I get 14.5. Okay, and your turn to try this out. Remember that when we take the lower half and the upper half, we don't, look, here I didn't include the median because the median wasn't a number, right? So I just took the lower half and the upper half. Here, the median was a number, and I chose not to include the median in my upper half and lower half.